guys, welcome back to the channel. This is the fourth episode for the Zoom automation application series, so that's great, we are making progress. Now there is good news and bad news. Good news is that the application icon is complete and it looks like this. There's not much difference from the original icon, but it is distinguishable and we can understand that this is the application that we use to automate Zoom. Now, bad news is that the name of the application ZoomBot is taken by another guy who wrote another program which is related to Zoom, and because of that we have to change our name. Now this guy's program, you can see it when you Google search ZoomBot and it's the first thing you see. Now the name that we are going to be switching to is Zoom Auto because it is an application that automates Zoom, hence Zoom Auto. Now, in this video, what we're going to be doing is we will be storing the data that we created into a data frame into a permanent storage system, which is the SQL database. And after that, we will be restoring data from the SQL database back into the applications table so that it still stays intact. If you didn't understand what I meant, suppose I hit add new meeting and I added two meeting columns. One is Aaron and the other is Fritz, and assume these cells also have data. Now I hit save and I quit the application. So I go here, this is the new icon, so I click here and I hit quit. After this I run the application again, and as you guys can see, that data that I entered is no longer in this table. So to prevent that from happening and so that the data stays intact, we will be using the restore option. And let's get into the programming part. To create a SQL database in Python, you need a package called SQLite3. Now this package is usually inbuilt in Python, but to check that you have to do an import SQLite3. Oh wait, I typed it here, sorry. You have to do an import SQLite3. Now if you don't see an error over here, that means you have the you have the package. If you don't have the package, all you have to do is go to your command prompt and do a pip install db-SQLite3. And if you hit enter, it shows requirement already satisfied for me because I installed it before. For you guys, it must be showing installing or downloading. Now after this, a few more things that we need to do before starting is change the names of these files. So it's ZoomBot UI now, so we have to shift this to Zoom Auto UI. And the same for this Qt file too, Zoom Auto UI. And after this, we have to change one more thing, because if you guys may have noticed, we have a ZoomBot file over here with the name ZoomBot, the label on the top of the application ZoomBot. We have to change that to Zoom Auto too. So for that, we quit the application and we hit no. We open the file again. Okay. And to do that, what we have to do is we have to go to the main UI file, and after that you have to do a find. That means Control F for me, and you have to search for self.appname. And after that you have to go down, keep going down, and this label under retranslate UI on line 132 contains appname.setText ZoomBot over here. You have to change this ZoomBot to Zoom Auto and hit save. And now if you hit run, you can see that the application name is changed from ZoomBot to Zoom Auto, and the basics are done. After this, we have to create a new Python file in which we will be typing in all our SQL database functions. So we clear everything in the file, we save the file as storage system because it helps storing us stuff. I'm not very good with names, so storage system. And let's get into our first time lapse. Well, that ends our time lapse, and let's get into the explanation part. So the first line will import the SQLite3 package. The second line imports our data frame from pandas. And in the fourth line, we create a database file called data.db and connect to it. Now we've given the path /, which means the root folder in which this Python file is stored. That means this data.db will be created in this folder where the other files are also stored. Now how this works is that this line first checks that whether we have a data.db file in this given folder, and if there is not a file called data.db, which is now that we don't have a file called data.db, it will create a new database file called data.db. Now in case if you do have a file called data.db in this given path, it will connect to that database folder and store that connection into this variable called conn, which is the short form for connection. So now if you check the folder, you can see that there's no database file. And if I run the program and go back to the folder, a new file is created over here called data.db, whose type is database file. So that's what the fourth line does. And now in the sixth line, we create the class called database. And in the eighth line, we create a new variable for a function called connection.cursor, which is a function of this connect. Now this cursor is mainly used to retrieve data from the database and other purposes too, but we only are using this for retrieving data, so that's what we're going to be showing today. And after this, we will be creating our main function, which is underscore underscore init underscore underscore, which contains another function called self.createTable, which we created over here. Now, createTable is where we create the table called meeting data. Now, how this works is that we execute a line to our SQL database, which is create table if not exists meeting data, and then the column names with their values. That means column name is going to be name, and then the value type is going to be text. ID is also going to be text. Everything column names, their values are going to be text format. That's what we're giving in this bracket. Now out here, what we're doing is create table if not exists meeting data. Now, the reason we're giving if not exists is because in case if there's already a table filled with data and this program runs, it will rewrite the table called meeting data, and then all our data will be lost. So to prevent that from happening, we will be creating a table called meeting data if it does not exist. So that's pretty much it. And after that, we have our next function called enter data. This function is what we're going to be using from our UI file over here. So this is our data frame format of the all details that we collect from the table that we did in the last video. Now this data frame will be passed to this function over here in meeting data, and then this meeting data will be sent to SQL to the table that we created called meeting data over here, and that is the parameter to the table, and this connection over here is that we give here. So this is the connection that we gave over here so that it connects to the correct table, which is data.db, and if exists equals replace. This is because every time you save the table, so suppose we go back to this file, we hit run, and this is the application. So we hit a few times add new meeting, and I fill data 1, 2, 3, and 4. Now I assume all these cells have data, and I hit save. Now this data whole table has been saved to the SQL database. Now suppose I edited one of these cells from 2 to 7, and if I hit save, instead of correcting this one cell, we will be replacing the whole table with this new table so that we don't have to code a lot, because editing one single cell is just a waste of time and a lot of programming. So to prevent that from happening, we'll just replace the whole table with a new one, which is faster and easier. That's what we do if exists equals replace. And index equals false because we don't need an index. Our index is already in our data frame file when we convert it. And after that, we have our last function, which is read data. Now this function will read the data which we will be using to restore our table in the UI, as we said in the beginning, and also it has other uses while we schedule the meeting and start the meeting and other purposes. So as we said before, we use the cursor function to execute select star from meeting data. Select star from meeting data means select all the data inside meeting data. You might have seen the same usage in Python where people use, suppose, from pandas import star, or any function import star. This is actually not a good practice, but it is used to import every function and every class inside this pandas function and pandas module or any other module you want. So that's what here we do. Select star from the table called meeting data, which means select everything from the table meeting data. After this, we create a variable called retval, which I created on my own. You can just change it if you want. This returns the value of the whole table that we stored inside the database as a data frame back into the program. So here's the data frame function that we imported, and self.cursor.fetchAll gets all the data from this table, from the database table, and then converts it into a data frame format so that we can use it easily, and then returns it back into our Zoom Auto UI program or any other programs we want. That's what these few lines do. Next, we have to create a function in the Zoom Auto UI Python file to restore data from the database back into the cells after you start the application. So to do that, let's get into our second short time lapse. Well, that ends our time lapse. Now, for starters, what we did is we imported our database class from our storage system file, which is right here. And then after that, we created a SQL variable which contains our database class so that's easy to access. And then we start our self.restore data every time we start the application so that we restore the data from the database into the app. And then we go to our close event, which is the protocol in which we tell the application how to quit when we use our system tray icon and hit the close button, quit button. So here we added a self.saveTable function, which we will get to in the end of the explanation, the reason why I put it there. And then in save table, we in the last line, I added a self.sql.enter data, and inside that I gave the parameter as meeting, which is the data frame format of all the data that you get in our table in the UI. So this data frame goes into a storage system file, and after that we go to the enter data and then enter this meeting or this data frame into our SQL database. That's what happens in save table. Then comes the restore data function. So first line in restore data is self.sql.read data. What read data does is it reads the data from the SQL database and stores it in this variable in a data frame format, which you have seen here. We return the value in a data frame format which contains all those columns. And after that, we do a 4x in range length of data. So length of data is the number of rows that is in that data frame. That's what length of data means. So x is the number of rows and for each number of row, we add a new meeting row inside the UI's table. That's what self.add meeting is. And after that, we do a for y in range length of data.columns. So this y is dependent on the number of columns inside the database, I mean on the data frame. So this is X and this is Y, just like a graph or your Excel sheet or such. And then we use our sorting system by checking the object name of the elements that we created using add meeting. Now these object names were given in these lines. Element dot set object name and the name. Now this name was given using the columns function that we created in our last episode, and this is what we use to identify what is text, what is datetime, and what is checkbox. So here we use, if the object name of the element inside the UI is text, then we put in the value of the text, which is name, ID, and password. The X and Y, that means the X and Y of the meeting data and the X and Y of the data frame are the same values because they're both in the same format, but the difference is one of them is in a list and the other is in a data frame. So we are just taking data from the data frame and putting it back into meeting data. That's what we do in restore data. What we did in save table, it's that we took the data from the list or the meeting data list and put it into the data frame. So in restore data, we're just doing the reverse. And as I said before, both of them are in the same structure, but just different formats. One is in a list and the other one is in a data frame. So X and Y values of both storage systems are the same. That's why we give if X dot Y dot object name is equal to text, then self.meeting dot X comma Y dot set text, because it is a text box, data dot locate x bracket x bracket y, which means it locates the value at that certain x comma y position and then it sets it to that certain element inside meeting data. This happens for the same in datetime and also checkbox. The only difference is for datetime we have to convert this text back into datetime format to set it into that element, because as I said before, every value that is inputted into this database is converted into a datetime format. See, it's datetime and the value type is text. So the same for audio and also video. For this same reason, we have to convert it back into the cube datetime format, and then dot from string data dot locate x bracket y into the format that we need, which is date, short form of the month, and the hours and minutes in 24-hour format. Next, we have our checkbox. Now we set this datetime using set datetime function for that element. And then we have our checkbox. Our checkbox, we can set the values tick and not ticked, or checked or not checked. Now how we do is, if the box is not checked, the value is 0. If the box is checked, then the value is 2. This is how it works. So if the we get the meeting data value, which is either 0 or 2, but it is in text format as it is coming from the database. And after that, we convert that text into an integer format or a number format, and then we use set check state to set it whether if it's checked or not checked depending on the values. So that's how restore data works. Now we can go back to our close event in which we added the self.save table. For this, let's just test the application first. So we'll just remove this line from here, and if I hit run, the application pops up as usual, and I'm gonna delete all this, and suppose I have this one line containing all the data: Aaron Fritz 123123, password as password, a certain date and time, and no audio. I hit save and I quit the application. So if I quit the application here and I run it once more, you can see that the data still stays the same. It does not get changed or does not get removed. It still stays there. So suppose if I add a few more meetings and I do 1, 2, 3, I hit save once more, I quit the application and I run it once more, the application still stays. Now, suppose in another case, I deleted all this and I have not saved the table. I added some more rows like this: 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And suppose all these cells also contain data. Now I forgot to hit save and I hit quit. Now if I run the application back again, the values are not the same. The values are the ones that we set before. Now to prevent this from happening, we give the save table function in our close event, so that if we accidentally close the application before saving, it will auto save everything that's written in the table and we are good for that. So we can just run the quit the application for now and run it once more. And suppose if I delete all this, create a few more rows and give it Q1, 2, 3, F, G, or H, and then I forgot to hit save and I hit quit. I didn't hit save, and if I hit run, all the values still stay there because I put the save table function inside the close event and it auto saved. So that's one useful function that people can use. Well, this brings us to the end of the video, and in this video what we did, to recap, is 1, we created a SQL database in Python. 2, we stored the data of the meetings in the SQL database for permanent storage. And 3, we found a way to restore the data from the SQL database back into our UI table the same way it was before quitting the application. Now in the next video, we're most probably going to be doing something related to the automation script that we created in the first episode. And everything that we created till now, that means everything from the first episode, that is the automation script, the close button, the database, the original main UI file, the storage system, the icon of the application, the UI Python file, that is this file, and also the Qt file of the UI. Everything will be uploaded into my GitHub page, and you guys can download it off or just copy it from there and use it. And that brings us to the end of this video. And if you guys like this content, subscribe to the channel, click on the notification bell, and I'll see you guys in the next one.